Hi, everyone. Aside from our usual filthy language, this episode contains talk of some disturbing and difficult topics, namely consent and sexual assault. So if those things are triggering for you, please feel free to skip this episode. Also, I just wanted to note that neither Shabnam nor I have any expertise in working with people with disabilities. So we use the terminology that, we've seen in the documentary and that we know from our limited experience. But if we get anything wrong, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always open to feedback, and we hope that we did the community justice with this discussion. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where there's no shortage of things to be enraged about in this documentary.
It's so enraging.
Oh, my God. Guys, I'm Amye Archer. I'm your host. I'm here with Shabnam, my buddy, my pal, my friend, my scholarly resource for a lot of things, my lawyer. Can I call you my lawyer?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. She's my lawyer. Welcome to the pod, and thanks for doing this with me.
Yeah, thank you. This is going to be an interesting one.
I will tell you that I think this came out in 2023 and all of a sudden people are seeing it. Is that true?
I thought it was new to Netflix. I don't know if it came out.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's the case. Maybe it came out, last year on another service and came to Netflix.
I think so.
But all of a sudden everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
And I always debate the best way to cover these things. Like, so there's certain things like I'll watch the whole thing through and then I'll go back and take notes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's sometimes I take notes and you're on the journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a you're on the journey with me situation.
Good. I like that.
Yeah. Because as I'm meeting Anna and I'm like, oh, she seems like a nice enough woman.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, where is this going?
Yeah, I found myself asking, like, very often, is this normal? And then, like, as I watched it the second and third time, I was like, this is really bad.
Yeah. Guys, we're talking about Tell Them You Love Me on Netflix. And, I was trying to think, at some point, did she have him type that? Because I don't remember that being said.
I was thinking that too. I think that when they were telling his family, I feel like he told her to tell his family that they were together, or she said to him, like, do you want me to tell them or something? Like, so I thought it was a reference to that.
Okay.
But I like the title because it's kind of like, if you ever have to say to someone, tell them you love me, that's like a bad sign.
Yeah. It's a great title.
Yeah.
And it kind of, really captures that idea of what is yours and what is being interpreted for you.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. There was a lot of, I want to say a lot of gray in this, even though in my opinion, it's not very gray. It's pretty black and white, and she violated a position of power.
Yeah.
But I can see how there could be some gray for some people.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Can I also just throw an interesting hypothetical out there?
Oh my God, yes. Go.
Okay. So there's like race and gender dynamics in this, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if, say it was a male professor who was doing this and it was a female, small, disabled woman. Like, if I do that exercise in my head, I feel really differently all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then if I do the exercise of, let's say it was like a black man and a small white woman, then I feel very different about how the legal stuff would have turned out. So
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very, I feel, this sounds bizarre, but I feel like she was trying to go a little Mary Kay Letourneau, like we're really in love and we're going to and Mary Kay Letourneau, she really committed to the bit, right?
Yeah,
she really
she's still
life
till death. Yeah, till death, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Just, I can't, like I always talk about, we always see things through a certain lens. And one of my major lenses is teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like whether it was formal teaching or not, You know what I mean? It was
Right.
still a position of guidance, of
Of
him being
like being
dependent on her in some way.
yeah, her being an aid to him in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no. All right, let's do it. So, chapter 1, communication. So, we start off in August 2011 with the Special Victims Unit of the Essex County Prosecutor's Office. And Derrick's mother's being interviewed by the prosecutor. And she says, since birth, she has noticed that something was off with him, like something wasn't right. So, they live in New Jersey. I don't know why I have that as a point, but I do. They live in New Jersey.
Yeah.
He has an older brother named John Johnson. Please, can we stop doing this to our children?
Oh,
Why
John
is his
Johnson.
name John Johnson?
I don't know, but I don't care because I just think he's wonderful.
He is the star of the show.
Yeah.
Like, I could sit and listen to him talk for hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
So he remembers that at first Derrick was fine, but then he became very listless. And
Mhm.
mom says he really wasn't doing anything. He was just sleeping all the time. He wouldn't take the bottle. Like, she knew something was right. And
Mhm.
she said then he started suffering seizures. So mom just, like, it was her intuition. Something
Mhm.
wasn't right.
Mhm.
So then he started having seizures. So she takes him to be evaluated, and they discover that he has a diagnosis of, I always said cerebral palsy.
Mhm.
Some people say cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
I think it's however you pronounce cerebral. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm indifferent. Yeah.
So
Cerebral it is.
so he was nonverbal. Dad takes off, and mom and brother become the primary caretaker. So let's talk about cerebral palsy for a minute. So this is from Mayo Clinic, just an overview in
Mhm.
case people don't know what it is. So it's a group of conditions that affect movement and posture, and it's caused by damage that occurs to the developing brain, most often before birth.
Mhm.
Symptoms appear during infancy or preschool years and vary from mild to serious. Children with cerebral palsy may have exaggerated reflexes. The arms, leg, and trunk may appear floppy, or they may have stiff muscles known as spasticity. Say that 10 times fast. Symptoms also can include irregular posture, movements that can't be controlled, a walk that's not steady, or some combination of these. Cerebral palsy also makes it difficult to swallow. It can cause eye muscle imbalance, in which the eyes don't focus on the same object. People with the condition might have reduced range of motion in their joints due to muscle stiffness. The cause of cerebral palsy and its effect on function may vary from person to person. Some people with cerebral palsy can walk while others need assistance. Some people may have intellectual disabilities, but others do not. Epilepsy, blindness, or deafness also might affect some people with cerebral palsy. There is no cure, but treatments can help improve function. The symptoms of cerebral palsy may vary during the child's development, but the condition doesn't get worse. The condition generally stays the same over time.
Oh wow.
So that's pretty much what we're looking at. Not everyone with cerebral palsy has intellectual deficit, but some do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a hit and miss game there. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember, didn't Jerry Lewis, wasn't that his telethon was for cerebral palsy?
That sounds right. Yeah,
Maybe.
I'm not sure though.
Not sure.
Yeah.
I personally don't know anyone with cerebral palsy, but I have had a student or two in my class
Okay.
who had it. I had one that was nonverbal and one that was verbal. So the nonverbal student that I had an aide with them,
Yeah.
a facilitated communicator, if you will.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. So the seizures end, and Brother John says it feels like he woke up suddenly and entered the world at some point. And mom says from that point on, John and Derrick were inseparable. And John says when Derrick is happy, you just know it. He does what they call the Stevie Wonder dance.
Yeah, so cute. Yeah.
And there are times that he could be self-abusive. He like bites on his hands and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But his brother's like, that probably comes from being frustrated because he can't communicate.
Yeah.
Which I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we meet Anna Stubblefield. So what did you think of her when we first met her?
Well, one of the first things she says is that she hopes she's not rewriting things in her head, and she sees how easily one could do that. And then she makes some other comment about My inclination is that I'm not guilty of a crime. I was like, this doesn't inspire confidence.
No. No, I would be 100% sure I wasn't guilty of a crime if I didn't
Yeah,
commit a crime. Yeah.
right. So,
Now, if I was guilty, I would be like, depends on how you look at it.
yeah.
So she's the director of philosophy at Rutgers, and she was teaching the American Studies doctoral program. John Johnson, the brother, was one of her students getting his PhD, and she taught this course about race and people with disabilities. So the course was looking at the notion of intelligence as a concept. If someone
Mhm.
doesn't speak, does that mean they're not intelligent? She says if someone can get you access to communication and you have something to say, that can solve your problem.
So far, so good,
So
right?
far, so good. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I like this. I like that
Yeah.
theory. I like that philosophy.
Yeah.
John says Anna was awesome. They
Yeah.
watched a video about Sue Rubin, which was someone who had no communication, and she was given access to what they call facilitated communication, which I will call FC going
Mhm.
forward. And this opened her life. She was able to go to college. She was able to like be successful and have a life that she would not have had was it not for FC. So John approached Anna after class one day and he tells her about Derrick. And he's like, I think this FC business could really help my brother. And she's
Yeah.
like, well, the nearest place is Syracuse and they're going to be really expensive. So why don't I try to do it? Okay, red
Mhm.
flag number one.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I thought.
Why don't I try to do it? That would be like
Yeah.
me saying, okay, you need a carpenter to put a deck on your house. Well, I mean, Timmy's good, but he would be expensive. So why don't you let me give it a try? I've been around the decks long enough. I can figure it out.
Yeah, or yeah, I don't know. I just
Like
saw this
she's not
as
certified or qualified in this.
yeah, yeah. And also, she's like a pretty big deal in her field. So it's sort of odd that she would take time away from that to do something that she's not like, that she has no business doing, really.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. She has a lot of exposure to it and
Right.
experience with it with her mother. But
Hmm.
like she's not a communication facilitator by
Right.
trade. Like that's
Right.
not what she does.
Right.
So we meet I think this woman's name is Deva
Cat.
Karnitz.
Oh, okay. I
Karnitz?
have Deva
Kasnitz.
Castness.
You're right.
Yeah.
Kasnitz. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm on my laptop and it's like so small. I can barely see it. Okay. She's an anthropologist who
Yep.
specializes in the ethnography of disability. And she
Yeah.
has something called torsion dystonia.
Yeah.
And the dystonia creates involuntary movements. She also couldn't communicate. And she met Anna in her role in the Society for Disability Studies. And she says Anna's a great listener. Like she has a way of just making you feel heard. And, that's something that a lot of people with disabilities are looking for. Like someone to just hear them, give them a chance, understand them, see the world from their point of view. Anna checked all those boxes for her.
And what's interesting is she says about Anna, she's able to look at me and drain all of her brain of all the things she thinks I would say and just listen to what I do say, which I found interesting because it didn't seem like I didn't get that same feeling in the way she was working with Derrick later.
Yeah, that's true. And we know that water is muddied later when we
Hmm.
hear from Howard Shane, our
Right.
hero. Okay.
Yeah.
So Anna's family was unusual for the time. Her mom, because Anna's probably in her 40s, right? So her mom is a
Seems like
boomer,
it.
probably.
Hmm.
And she was unusual for the time because like she worked with a lot of people with disabilities and wanted to learn how to help them and figure it out. And she had forward thinking, if you will, when it came to this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And Anna said she became very fascinated with disabilities and impairments when she was a young kid. And she would like blindfold herself and pretend to be blind. She would walk around on crutches. Like she was very interested in trying to experience the world from that point of view.
So I don't have children. Is this normal?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, I shouldn't say that because I think maybe the pretending you're blind could have been. I could
Yeah.
see me doing that when I was a kid, but
Hmm.
like not the obsession with like trying to walk on crutches and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. My kids never did that. I have no idea.
Yeah, and she said that her dad built her crutches, which was like sort of like strange to me because I'm thinking your dad is promoting this to you or getting you to think about this more. And it's almost like she's romanticizing disability. I love the
Yes.
fact that her mom says labels are for jars, not people. That's great. But then it
Great.
almost seems like they're romanticizing it in a strange way.
And I also wonder if she was just around mom a lot, and if
Hmm.
as a kid she sees her mother giving these people attention, so she has to
Good
manifest
point.
a disability to get her mother's love and attention
Yeah,
in her
maybe.
kid mind, you know what I mean?
And also she really took this to into adulthood. She's like
Oh, yeah.
specialized in this for her whole life. So it really makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah. She would she learned braille and she learned sign language, which I think is great, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of people should learn sign language.
Mhm.
Anna says, so much about disability is dependent on the environment. And my mother learned about facilitated communication at a conference in 1990 when she learned about a woman named Rosemary Crossley.
Yeah.
So, Rosemary Crossley started to notice that when she assisted her patient who had cerebral palsy by supporting the elbow and
Mhm.
providing stability in the movement, the patient could then use the letter chart, which
Right.
is something that a lot of people who have the more physical aspects of cerebral palsy can't do.
Mhm.
So her mother like takes this and
Mhm.
brings it home and starts working with her other patients and really gets
Yeah.
into it. And she was videotaping it and Anna was running the camera. So
Yeah.
she was seeing all of this. I
Mhm.
could imagine her with the big VHS. Remember
Yeah.
the big VHS tape
Yeah.
recorders? Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I remember my aunt and uncle got like a beta
Uh-huh. Okay.
recorder in they got married, I think, in 1983, so it was probably like 85,
Uh-huh.
84, and
Uh-huh.
we just thought they were rich. Like, "Oh my god, you must be wealthy people to have a beta recorder." It was so weird.
Yeah. My dad was a huge fan of using the video recorder when we were young. So
So do you have a million videos?
yeah, that I don't have the stuff to play it on for.
Yeah, we just got all of Timmy's family's videos put on DVD, and none of us even have a DVD player. So I'm like, "Can you get this to me on the cloud somehow? Can you get
Yeah,
this to me
exactly.
digitally?"
How can I stream this?
So, she says Anna says, "Seeing people for the first time be able to communicate was amazing." And you know what this reminded me of?
What?
I went through this strange period where I was obsessed with, because I'm hard of hearing, so I'm really always interested in the cochlear implants and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Seeing the babies here for the first time. Do you ever see those
Oh,
videos?
yeah, those
Like
are
a
yeah.
baby will hear their mother for the first
Uh-huh.
time, and I'm
Eh
always sobbing.
yeah, and they have the ones where they see them for the first time too because they give them glasses.
Yes.
Those are so
Yes.
crazy too,
Mhm.
because they start tearing up. It's like,
It's so
cute and
emotional.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just to open up somebody's world in that
Mhm.
way is really admirable and emotional.
Yeah.
So now it's March of 2009 and Derek and Anna meet. Anna sits down with Derek in front of John and Daisy, his mom, and she asks him to point to stuff and she observes how he tries really hard to control his arm
Mhm.
and he's unable to. So she starts with a little support on the elbow and then she moved into testing his literacy and she said he did okay with that. Then she helps him with the keyboard, and it's called a Neo,
Yeah.
and it keeps a record of everything. And so the movie, the producers, the director, whomever, tells us all the communication you're going to see typed out on the screen in this documentary is from the actual record of the Neo.
Mhm.
But here's my argument with that. We don't see the good stuff. We don't see that conversation he had with the parents about his love.
Oh, you mean when they told the
Yeah,
parents
we didn't see
the
the
yeah.
actual typing. Where is it?
Well, so I read an article with some interesting, like mild sexting of theirs
Ooh.
from the Neo.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, we'll get to that. Hold on.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So she gets him the Neo. She says he made some mistakes, but once she corrected him, he got it easily. Like, for instance, he would hit the H instead of the A and, things like that. So Daisy says, Daisy is mom, I
Mhm,
was so excited. And John says, he was working on his physical impairments with the day camp and
mhm,
they were helping him get more mobility with walking. And so he was able to like pick out who the president was, and he was able to tell Anna that he wanted to be called. Now, Amanda and I talked about this when I recorded 90 Day
Okay.
UK, which will be last week for you hearing it today. I think he wanted to be called D-Man, not D-Man.
Yeah, same.
Yeah?
I think he wanted to be called D-Man, but also that seems like a nickname, right? And she
Yes.
had everybody in his college course calling him that too, which is sort of odd.
I didn't like that. And his brother points that out later.
Yeah.
He's like, she's trying to like lay claim to him and
Right.
rename him.
Right. Yeah.
And no.
Yeah.
So they begin working together, and she says by the end of the year, they were making a lot of progress. She says he was communicating in sentences. And then this is when she really got to know him. And I was starting to be like, where is this story going? Because I went into this completely blind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Anna says one of the regrets that man, I call him Derrick because this man is ridiculous.
I just after seeing the whole thing, I like went in my notes and I was just like changing everything to Derrick.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not calling him Demand.
No, like unless I hear it from him, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Anna says one of the regrets that Derrick had is that he didn't go to college. So she enrolled him in this Saturday morning class. It was a African American literature class, and she went with him as his aide for facilitated communication. Sharonda, who's a student but not in that same class, agreed to work with him outside of class. And they both agreed that he was showing that he really understood the book and the characters and what was happening. At one point, like he wrote an essay, and it was kind of showing that he was comprehending the material.
So I have a couple of thoughts.
Okay.
The first thing is that she said that the essay wasn't really written very well, but he still was able to write stuff, right? So that says to me, if this whole thing is true, maybe he has a certain amount of capacity, but I think at the very least Anna exaggerated it.
Yeah.
But also, if I was Sharonda Jones and I was told by my university and this PhD professor that this guy is like really smart and he can write essays, and I go into one session with him and I'm not able to get him to do that, I would start thinking, there's something wrong with me. I shouldn't be diminishing someone's disability. I should be better at my job.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe subconsciously or consciously, all those factors would play into the essay that ended up coming out.
Yeah, that's interesting because even if so two things. Anna makes it very clear that the essay was specific enough to indicate that he had read the book, right? And that Sharonda had not read the book. But we don't know if she Googled, what book are we talking about? If it's To Kill a Mockingbird, we all know what that is.
But also in the interview to the police, Sharonda says, I hadn't read the book, but my roommate read the book and he wrote some of the same stuff my roommate did. And so it's like, well, did you read what your roommate wrote before or after?
Did it seep in? If he's typing something about the boy did this, she might just do a quick Google search or ask her or whatever, what's the boy's name?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? To kind of get, and she might be filling in the blanks. And like you said, maybe even subconsciously, she doesn't even realize how much she's assisting him.
Right.
I don't know. So she says, Anna tells us this story about one time when she edited what he wrote slightly. So he had said something and he wanted to present it to the class, and she kind of edited it and presented it in her own way. And he yelled at her. And she said that was a sign. And we did see the typing of that. Yeah. He was like, I want to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
And so she said that was a sign to me that he did not like if I was speaking for him.
Right.
Okay. Chapter 2, Power. About a year after Derrick started typing, Anna's mom had a conference for the FC community and asked Derrick if he wanted to present. And John says, this is a very white space. So I was really happy that Derrick was able to go and able to present and participate.
Mhm.
Anna gets him some books on communication theory, and she claims that he wrote a page, like something that he wanted to say. She says he was really showing how thoughtful and intelligent he was. And this is where I'm like, where are we going with this?
Yeah.
Because then she says, I'm a nerdy intellectual girl who really likes intelligence. And I was married at the time. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But my marriage wasn't great. But Derrick and I were just friends. And I literally wrote, oh no.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
no.
Yeah, I wrote,
Ugh.
is this normal? No, it's not normal.
No. Because here's my thing. I don't care what his intellectual capacity is. He
Yeah.
could be in Mensa for all I care. She is in a
Yeah.
position of authority over him.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Spring 2011.
So
Go ahead. I'm
just
sorry.
like she's a professor at the university, and he's a
Yes.
student there. I don't understand how this doesn't like raise a concern in her brain.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm telling you, she's delusional.
Yeah.
She's delusional.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. I don't know. Was he a technical student or was he just auditing that class? Well, I guess to take one course, you have to be enrolled though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's even if he wasn't a student, John is her student. This is his brother.
Yeah.
Like there's so many ethical lines that are crossed here. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So at one point, Derrick is talking to Anna's class, and someone asks him about his aspirations for love and marriage. And he says, that doesn't happen for people like me. And she goes, instinctively, I felt like, yes, it can. It can happen. You can have that with me. And I wrote, oh, fuck, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh, gosh.
She says, in that moment, I had to realize, like, oh, no, I have feelings for this man. And I have to think about this. Yeah, you better think about it. Think about it and think your way out of this.
Exactly.
Because this is not right.
Yeah. Make a U-turn.
Wrong. Yeah. Reroute, detour.
Yes.
So she told him she loved him a week later, and she says he typed, I love you too. And he asked her to kiss him, and she did.
Okay. And then she says he asked her again, and then she did it again.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that's when my brain started going like shut down mode. I don't know how to process this.
Control-Alt-Delete. Control-Alt-Delete.
Yeah.
So John says at this time, Derrick started going to conferences and stuff, and there started to be some tension. And we hear these stories about like Daisy's cruising down the highway, driving the two of them, and she's playing her gospel music. And Anna changes it to classical music because she says that's what Derrick likes. And Mom is like, what?
Yeah.
Like, he's my son. I know he likes gospel music. He enjoys it a lot. He goes to church a lot. Like, this is his thing.
Yeah, he's been doing the Stevie Wonder dance to it his whole life.
Yes, he loves it. Mom says also one day she was feeding him and Anna's like, what are you doing? He's a vegetarian. Why are you giving him meat? And he also liked red wine. And John's like, it's just she was almost trying to change him into who she wanted him to be.
They're from this. Are they from where are they from again? New Jersey. Right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The mom had a little Southern twang. I don't know.
Oh, did she? Yeah. Maybe
I don't know.
From the South.
Because I was like, I don't know that there's men in the South that are vegetarian, and not to stereotype or anything. But I was just
well, and just why would she make him a vegetarian?
Yeah.
It's weird. Anyway, so Anna says when you are in a caretaking position, and okay, so see, here's where I struggle with her because this I don't disagree with her on. Mm-hmm. She says sometimes when you're in a caretaking position for someone, you don't see people as having their own autonomy and their own ideas and stuff because that's a hard adjustment to make. And I do think there is some truth to that.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the more common thing is like people experience is like teenagers. Like you said to me in one of our last episodes that the individuality springs up out of them at some point, right?
Yeah. All of a sudden they become people and you don't know how to, that's a great example. Like you don't know where that came from. It's a hard adjustment. It's real hard.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's probably even more difficult if someone has a child with a disability. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's all the more reason to maybe she should have she should have tried, like, say she'd hypothetically gotten divorced and all of this was true. If
Anna.
she Yeah, Anna. And
Hmm.
then she'd like brought the family along to be like, I really want to take care of it. Like, I feel like there's so many better ways to do this if
Yeah.
she was genuine. Like, you don't just this is just it's just really poorly handled in addition to being delusional and crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So Anna says one thing that Derrick wanted is he wanted to move out of his mother's house. And we see
Mhm.
him saying this. We see him typing that he wants to move out and to not be a burden. And I'm thinking to myself, these are complex thoughts
Yeah.
for somebody who doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists have all examined him and said he is not capable of functioning at that high of a level.
Yeah.
That
And
he
it
can
does
function, but not at that high of a level. And I'm thinking this is pretty complex.
and it doesn't seem like his mom or his brother were making him feel like a burden,
No, not
or
at
that
all.
yeah, or that there was something that changed, like, his mom, had some ailment and she couldn't take care of him and now he felt like a burden. So
Right.
it's really odd that she was saying that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So
Can we
Anna,
can, can
go
we
ahead.
talk about the wine for a second? The
Yes, go
wine
ahead.
example.
Hmm.
So his brother says, "Oh, I can't wait to go home and have a beer with you." And Anna says he doesn't like beer, he likes wine. And the brother says he doesn't think that that's the case because he's never liked communion wine, right?
Hmm.
But this whole thing is weird because I'm like, like, I'm sure there's better wine than communion wines, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, is she like providing him nice wines, and like, when are they doing this? Like, why does he
Yes. When
like
is
wine
this
now?
happening? And is
Yeah,
it even safe? Because I'm sure he's on a lot
yeah,
of medications, especially if he's on anti seizure medication. He
right.
shouldn't be drinking.
Yeah, so I was so confused by this whole wine thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
It's weird. It's
yeah.
John nails it in the end. He's like, she
Mhm.
was making him into somebody that she wanted him to be.
Yeah, she was,
Hmm.
like, gentrifying
Yep.
his personality.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. So Anna wants him to move into a facility, and John and mom are like, no way, no way, it's too expensive. And mom's like, if he wants his independence, he can move into the basement like John did. This was
yeah.
such a mom thing to say. I loved her.
Yeah.
I love Daisy.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's great. And Anna says, you need to cut the apron strings. He can do this. John says it got weird then. And he
Yeah.
said he was really tuned into this because he couldn't shake the feeling that it was based in race and that this was racist.
Yeah, and okay, this is what I'm talking about where she handled it poorly. Like, even just in a regular situation, like, can you imagine if someone came to you and was like, you should let one of your daughters move out. You need to, like, cut the apron strings, and they're still in high school. You'd be like, "What?"
I
Like,
would burn
y
their house down.
yeah, that's not
Mhm.
how you try to work with
No,
people,
no, not at
Yeah.
all. Not at
Yeah.
all. So John goes through this really interesting explanation about when, divorce was high and single mothers, specifically Black single mothers, were portrayed as a deficit. Like if you had a single mother, you were somehow ripped off in childhood, right?
Mhm.
And especially if it was a Black mother because they weren't capable of being like, good
Yeah.
mothers. In his opinion, this is what not in his opinion, but he's saying this is the history of it, right?
Yeah.
So he says, so this is based on the idea that some people may be inherently deficient when in fact, like my mother has been studying how to care
Yeah.
for Derrick and everything she needs to know about people with cerebral palsy for 30 years.
Yeah.
So like she wasn't some hack that was
Right.
just like I'm going to take care of my kid. Like she knew her stuff.
Yeah,
And
exactly, yeah.
Anna's supposition that she didn't know her stuff was racist, he felt.
Yeah, a
Mhm.
racist, and Anna, I think, felt like her and her own mother are the foremost experts on
Yes.
everyone for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's almost like she was making it a class issue, but she
Mhm.
was basing the idea of class on race. if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like it
Yeah.
was
I could see.
really,
Yeah.
there's a lot bad here with Anna. Okay.
Yes.
So Anna says that she and Derrick were not sure how to tell Daisy and John about their budding romance. Hey everyone, stay tuned. Little Miss Recap will be right back after these words. So one Sunday, they're at his house and Mom is at church. And they start making out and he gets overwhelmed. And she's like, okay, I thought it was over. But then he typed out, can I touch your breast? Like, this is what I'm saying. We don't see this. We don't see
Yeah.
this typed out on the screen. So they
Okay.
didn't pull this data.
Do you want to hear
You have
what?
it. Go.
Okay. So for some reason, I found this quote from what was the keyboard called?
The Neo.
Neo. Yeah.
Mhm.
It said that he says to her, porn exploits women and you're more beautiful than any porn star. I'd rather just be.
Wait. I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
Derrick said porn exploits women and you're, come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he said, I'd rather be just thinking about you when we make love.
Okay.
And if you really want to be grossed out, another article that I saw a snippet of talked about, and I don't know if you can edit this out if you want to, talked about her giving him oral and he wears a diaper. So it actually says she took off his pants, then she took off his diaper, and then it goes into all the detail. And I'm just like, wow, this is.
I am not cutting it. Nothing is too dirty for this podcast.
Okay. It's like, it's not just dirty. It's like demented. It's very just.
I know.
Yeah.
It's very like, you need to stop and ask yourself what you are doing with your life if you're at this point.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
If you're a teacher and you have to take off your student's diaper to give them oral sex, something's wrong.
Yeah, many things.
Wrong. Many things are wrong. Like just stop.
Yeah.
So they're at the house, like I said, and he types out, can I touch your breasts? And then, can you take your clothes off? And he says, I've been dreaming of this. Then he asks if it would be possible for them to make love. And she says, well, we'll give it the old college try. Why not try it? And they do.
She was so casual about that.
I know.
There's only one way to find out. Right?
I know. So on Memorial Day, they decide to tell Mom and John. And Anna was worried that they would try to separate them. But she says, he was typing in that we're in love and that we made love. Like, this is what I want to see. I want to see this.
Yeah.
And Mom said, I love Daisy. I had to sit on my fucking hands because I was going to like slap a bitch. I swear to God, that's what she was saying.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, well, aren't you married, Anna? And she's like, oh, yeah, technicality. I guess I'm going to have to talk to my husband, which we find out at the end she has a kid.
Yeah, 2 of them, I think.
Oh, all I know is I knew a daughter. I didn't know the other one.
Because they showed a picture where they blurred out the faces, and there was there was at least 2 in those pictures.
John had to leave the room. He basically had to leave the room, and like Poodle does sometimes when he has to get up and walk around the room, John had to get up, walk around his basement, try not to punch anybody in the face. Like, he was enraged, and I don't blame him.
No, I don't either.
Anna claims that Daisy hugged her and said, we'll figure this out, and she left. Maybe Daisy did do that because Daisy, number 1, has been blindsided.
Yeah.
And number 2, Anna is presenting herself in a position of authority, not only to Derrick, but to this family.
Yeah.
So like there's a power dynamic at play here.
Yeah. I mean, I could see her just being like, okay, just get out of my house.
Right. We'll figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm confused. I don't know what, like, just in that moment, just being. Anyway, so John calls the next morning, which, everybody probably had a chance to sleep on this and think about how gross it is. And he says, we don't want you seeing him again until we sit down and talk.
Mm-hmm.
And they would talk on the phone, but Daisy kept pulling out of the talk. Like, she kept saying, nope, can't do it. So we hear Anna leaving a message saying, you have my blood oath that I will leave my husband and I will be with Derrick forever. Okay.
That sounds like super sane, no?
Yeah, super sane. I'm always promising blood oaths to people.
Yeah.
So John says, part of the facilitated communication training was for them to learn to facilitate it, but they were having a hard time. So like the family members would also try to learn. And John remembers Anna saying, you can't give up. You just have to keep trying. And you have to almost anticipate what he's going to say.
Right. Which is very
What?
different. Yeah, exactly. And that's so different than what Deva said, where she said, "Oh, Anna's so
Yes.
good at like not trying to anticipate what you're going to say and listening to you."
Right. And there's a difference between the verb anticipate and interpret.
Right.
Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
So,
But
John,
but anticipate's pretty bad too, you know?
yeah,
Oh, I see
yeah.
what you're oh,
No,
I
I'm
get what you're
saying they
saying.
should
Yeah.
be
Right.
interpreting,
Yeah.
but they're anticipating, which implies,
Yeah.
they're not really saying that. It's up
Yeah.
for debate.
Yeah.
So, did you find the Frontline documentary that John talks about that he found with Howard Shane? How was that?
Oh gosh, it was I felt like I was 8 again with the videotaping of it. But it was okay, so basically these I think it's one child initially
Mhm.
accused a guy named Jerry Girardi of molestation based on like within the facilitated communication, right? So
Yeah.
that's when they start really digging into it. So you see a lot of footage of these children doing facilitated communication.
Yeah.
And basically a lot of them are, a lot of it's like they're literally like looking up in the air, not looking at the board, and their one finger is being like they're pointing to different letters.
Mhm.
It's very much like the Emperor's New Clothes story, right?
Mm.
It's just like this is logically not really real. That's very different than the CNN segment that they show in the documentary. And I
Mhm.
think you mentioned the girl's name earlier,
Mhm.
who seems like she has some disabilities, but she's very much paying attention. She's able to hold the keyboard, and
Mhm.
that's a different sort of use case of FC, I feel like.
Yeah.
But they just really debunked it in the Frontline documentary, and Dr. Howard Shane was really instrumental in that, and really showing that they basically had a test where a courtroom stenographer, they said she can type without looking, but she sets her fingers on reference keys to begin with. But if you ask even that same trained person, can you type with one finger without ever setting a reference, they can't do it either.
Mhm.
So it
Mhm.
was a really interesting kind of accusation against FC, and really profound one, I think.
Yeah, and he does this double blind study
Mm-hmm.
where he shows the person and the facilitator the same picture,
Yeah.
and they can't see each other's, and they type the same thing. But when he shows them different pictures, they type what the facilitator sees.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me. And
I mean, it's feels like it's totally debunking it.
yeah, it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Howard Shane deducted that a lot of the time the facilitator was communicating. And Anna says, I was conscious of this, but we had even argued, and there was proof that I wasn't influencing him. So she knew the controversy around it, but she was saying, like, I have proof. For example, when I spoke for him, like what he said to me, well, you can still be moving that, idiot. Like you could say,
Yeah.
you know what this reminds me of almost? The Ouija board. Do
Yeah.
you remember the
Yeah.
Ouija board?
Yeah.
Like, we could have sworn that a soldier from the 1920s was talking to us
Exactly.
in the graveyard and telling us to drink blood.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that was just my teen experience, but of course we were moving it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So, you know what this whole documentary feels like is, in Quiet on the Set when, Drake Bell's dad says that when he raises questions about Brian Peck, he gets this guilt, like this kind of put in this place of, you're just saying that because he is gay. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so it feels like that's what this whole documentary felt like that,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what Daisy went through here. Like
Mhm.
and John too, like to feel like your loved one who for all intents and purposes is closed off from the world suddenly has that door open
Yeah.
And you're like, you just want to believe it so badly, and you want it for them so badly. And in the back of your mind, very similarly to Drake Bell's father, like, you're like, I don't want to take this away from my kid if this is real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
how do you my heart broke for her. Like, she
Yeah.
really, and I do believe at the end of the day, it just came down to her instinct.
Yeah.
Like, her instinct was just like when he was little, that something was off. Her
Yeah.
instinct and John's instinct with Anna is that something was off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what she had to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So Deva says that she has seen facilitated communication work. Absolutely. So there are some people who believe that it works.
Mm-hmm.
John says, at the time, we didn't want to pursue any legal course of action. We just wanted her to leave us the hell alone, but she wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the final straw came when she reached out to his day facility. I keep calling it a day camp, but it's like a facility, a day program, if you will. And she asked to see him. And John got pissed off. And he goes, to the dean at Rutgers. And she's like, dude, get a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, she was like,
Yeah.
So Daisy calls Anna. We have a recording of it. And she says, Derrick is not acting like himself. And I think he misses you. And she's like, I need to know exactly what happened. Like, how many times did, and I immediately saw through this. I was like, Anna, you're being set up. This is a taped phone call. But she didn't see it. And she's given real specific details. And she talks about a time in her office where she had to put out exercise mats and stuff, and have
like
sex
a yoga
with
mat
him.
or something. Yeah. And the fact that she didn't see that coming, I'm like, you must be you have to be delusional.
You're disconnected from reality if you don't think this family did a complete 180 and are suddenly like, tell me all the details of you having sex with my kid.
Yeah. Especially because the mom said make love. And I feel like the mom wouldn't. The mom doesn't view it like that. Right. So that's a red flag.
No.
Yeah.
So one day she is approached by the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, Anna is, and they question her about Derrick. And she tells them the whole truth because she doesn't think she has anything to hide, except she leaves out the part about them having sex. Yeah, you left out the rape. That was, Because I feel like if there is even a question about whether consent is being given or not, it's not in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So she gets back to Rutgers and someone's waiting for her outside, hands her a letter like, you're being suspended. You're done. Mm-hmm. We hear Sharonda now, the student helper, being interviewed, and she talks about the book report he wrote. She says, I never read the book. Like, how would I know to guide him? But then again, he was writing the same thing as my roommate wrote, who read the book. The professor of the class is interviewed, and they're like, I don't think this is real. I don't think he was answering for himself. Like, this is not a believer of facilitated communication. Let's put it that way. Now Howard Shane is called in. They brought in the big guns. Mm-hmm. And he says he's never seen anything like this. He says he went into it with an open mind, despite the many, many, many like evaluations and medical records that said that he was not capable of this level of thinking. Mm-hmm. He still went into it with an open mind. And Shane says Derrick failed some pretty low level tests.
Yeah.
And he tells us this interesting thing. He said, for example, if Derrick was hungry, he could go tap on a refrigerator. Like, he knew that's where the food was. But if you asked him, when that concept moves to the abstract, when you ask him to just pick up, like you said, no point of reference, just pick out a refrigerator, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So he interviewed Daisy, and he said that from everything Daisy was observing and everything, Derrick was functioning at a really low level.
I think it said, I saw his report, it said 6 to 12 months.
Yeah,
that's just shocking after you think about what Anna was saying.
Yeah. Howard Shane said, based on everything I observed, I agreed with his long medical history that he was not functioning at an intellectual level.
Yeah.
Anna is charged with sexual assault.
Yes.
Now we move into Chapter 3, guilt. September 2015, the trial begins, and Anna's mom says, I'm relieved the trial is happening because I know my daughter's not guilty, and basically I want her to get out of jail. Anna says, I'm not some pervert who liked to molest impaired people. That's simply not true. So one thing I learned in working with students with disabilities over the years is that the way that we use these terms is you put the person first.
Okay.
So you would say person with disabilities. You wouldn't say like
Interesting.
impaired
Okay.
people, or you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the fact that I think she said that
Yeah.
really kind of raised a hair with me, because that's
Interesting.
kind of like the newer language, is it's people centered.
Interesting. Yeah.
So she says, this isn't fair to Derrick because he seduced me and he deserves some credit for that. That was gross.
I thought I was going to throw up at that
That was
point.
really gross.
Yeah.
So now we see that the court determined, okay, so this is important, and you have some notes on this later, right?
Yes.
That they didn't allow any of the NEO information in. They didn't allow any of the facilitated communication stuff in because they felt that it didn't meet the standards of admissible evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, at the end of the day, it was my word.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at one point, Daisy walks Derrick into the courtroom. And Anna's mom said, this was gross. They made a human being into an exhibit. Daisy walked him in a way that he looked feeble, but Anna and I know that we both know that he could walk better than she was presenting. No one on the jury had physical disabilities or understood this world. And Anna said, at the end of the day, I just had to tell my story and hope that the jury would see that he was a capable man. She says she would not have fallen in love with him if he wasn't consenting. He wasn't consenting.
Yeah. Ugh.
If we have to go to court to decide if he's consenting, the answer is no.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-mm. So Daisy says Anna's attorney made her out to be the villain. Mm-hmm. And then Daisy says, this whore raped my son and I had to compose myself.
Yeah.
And she said, he is my son and I know him better than anyone. Now, this is where John says he was changing Derrick's diaper one day.
Uh-huh.
And he saw abrasions on his back. Like somebody had dragged him across a floor.
Yeah.
He asked the day facility if he had an accident or he had fallen, and no one knew anything about this. And now he says that lined up to when they were in her office and she was having sex with him on the exercise mat. He says, I don't think Anna realized what she was doing to my brother or my family. He starts to tear up.
Yeah.
And he says, that woman didn't give a damn about my brother. That was powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a TikTok video of a TikToker saying, if this was my brother, this would be a murder documentary. That's what she said.
Yeah. And John I have to give him credit. He really he let the facts speak for themselves. He was calm. He was cool. He was, he was the hero of this documentary, in my opinion.
Definitely.
And so the verdict comes back guilty. And I wrote, wait, she has a daughter? Because this is where it comes out that she has a daughter.
Yeah.
And Vera believes Anna is naive, but she really did believe that this was consensual. And Anna's mom said, I have never doubted her. She is the most compassionate person I have ever known. At sentencing, John addresses the court. And this is where he says, Anna tried to lay claim and rename my brother. She tried to supplant Derrick's life, one rooted in his African-American family, with something she thought was better. She is not Sandra Bullock, and this is not The Blind Side. And I was like,
good for him. Yeah.
If I was in that courtroom, I would start clapping.
Yeah.
And he says, Derrick is not some poor black kid from the ghetto who needs someone to save him. She raped someone who could not consent to sex.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah, he is.
Now her ex-husband weighs in.
This was fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
More on this, please. Can we get an interview with him?
Yeah.
So the judge reads an impact statement from the ex-husband. And I thought it was going to be like, she needs to be out of jail to raise our kids.
Yeah.
And da-da-da. He's like, she's a pathological liar and a narcissist. And she will stop at nothing to get what she wants. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa. I mean, I've been divorced. I don't even think my ex-husband would talk about me like that. And I wouldn't talk about him like that.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
So she gets... okay, I had a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
2 12-year sentences served concurrently. Does that mean at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. So, And then after these 12 years, she would be on parole for the rest of her life.
Yes.
Howard Chayne says, I never believed that she was a predator. I do think what she was doing was in his best interest, but a life with her would have been a false life because we don't know if he wanted it. And Howard Chayne says she was the victim of problematic methodology.
Yeah, that's pretty generous.
I don't think so, dude. That's pretty generous.
Yeah.
Like, does I want to call up Howard Chayne and be like, do you know she had sex with him? Because I don't think maybe they told him that part.
Yeah.
I think he's like, oh, they thought they were in love. That's sweet. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So 2 years later.
Yeah.
Anna appealed and is out of prison after pleading guilty to 2 years. They ruled her, and we'll get to, you have some on this. We'll get to that
I have
in a
the
second.
details. Yeah.
So they ruled her defense was inhibited by the exclusion of facilitated communication. She says her life is ruined now. Like when she first came out of prison, she was waitressing, but a customer complained, they fired her. And now she works from home and no one knows her. So guys, when you're calling like customer service for AT&T, you might be talking to Anna Stubblefield. You don't know.
That's a scary thought.
Isn't it? She says her whole identity was teaching and she doesn't know what Derrick's life is like now, but she has a mutual friend who says that Derrick was lucky to have had the relationship he had with her and lost it rather than to never have it at all. Okay. All right.
Yeah, whatever.
And then Daisy says she's had to put Derrick on medication because he masturbates so much. And this is Anna's fault.
Yeah.
John says one of the hardest things for them was to accept that all the hope they had for Derrick was taken away. That was really sad.
Yeah.
And Daisy says the psychiatrist has deemed that Derrick is incapable of taking care of himself, and I have embraced and accepted that, and I love him for who he is. He is my child. And then at the end, we see on the end screen, the use of facilitated communication has been rejected by the APA and by the American Speech Language Hearing Association and several other prominent organizations. But some still insist it is a vital means for some nonverbal people to communicate.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about this appeal.
Okay, so I'm going to start with, so Anna was charged with 2 counts of first-degree aggravated sexual assault, which means the jury needs to figure out whether Anna knew or should have known that Derrick was physically, intellectually, or mentally helpless or incapacitated and couldn't consent. So basically, the jury needs to take a walk inside Anna's brain and figure out what she knew or should have known. And so it's kind of like a Russian doll. The jury needs to open up her mind, see what's in there, and see what she would have thought opening up the Russian doll of Derrick's brain to see whether he consented or not.
Yeah.
So it's quite a weird task.
Yeah,
right?
they have to like focus on her intent.
Yes.
And that's hard.
So in the lead up to the trial, the presiding judge decided to exclude, like you said, any evidence related to FC on the grounds that it isn't on it isn't based on well accepted scientific evidence, right? So Anna was
it's not scientifically. There's no peer review studies for this stuff. It's not scientifically based.
And I mean, if you just watch the Frontline documentary, you could tell that. So in any case, so Anna was convicted in 2015, but in 2017, the conviction was overturned by the appeals court, which said that the trials court blanket ban on FC related evidence was too severe. So one example they called out was the exclusion of the Crossley tapes. So as you remember, you mentioned earlier, Dr. Rosemary Crossley is the inventor and leading global advocate of FC. And the Crossley tapes were recordings of her testing Derrick. So the appellate court said that she had at times helped him point to targets on the board, but but there were a lot of times during the assessment where Derrick reached out to the targets without her help. In 12 hours of testing, he is said to have answered 45 such questions on his own and gotten 43 of them correct. So Anna's lawyers said that is convincing proof that Derrick is intelligent and capable of providing sexual consent. So the prosecution countered saying that Dr. Crossley influenced Derrick's answers because even when she wasn't holding his arm, she was holding the targets and could have moved the one she wanted him to reach for. So at trial, backing up. So at trial, the judge reasoned saying she basically said the back and forth over the videotape, quote unquote, has been a very interesting exercise. But at some point in reading this, I was like, you know what? I'm too involved in the forest. I need to deal with the tree. And
Mhm.
the tree, she says, is that Derrick was already deemed legally incompetent and unable to consent. And therefore, this case should have been looked at like statutory rape. So basically, if we say as a society that a 15-year-old girl can't consent, then how can you say Derrick can?
That's a
But
good point.
yeah, but the appellate court judge makes their point by asking, why should the trial court judge's opinion of whether Crossley moved the targets be any more valid or important than the jury's views? So that is a question of fact, whether or not she moved the
Mhm.
targets, and not law. And juries are supposed to decide questions of fact. So the appellate court didn't take issue with the trial courts barring FC ahead of the trial, but they felt like the lower court overstepped when they determined that Dr. Crossley had been using FC in the video recording instead of allowing the jury to assess it for themselves.
I kind of agree with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I agree that the jury should have been able to view that evidence.
Yeah, but I still think they would have reached the same conclusion.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think that, if we're asking whether Anna should have known or knew that he couldn't consent, there's just the fact that he's been legally deemed incompetent should be reason enough for her to know that he legally can't consent, you
Right.
know?
Again, if you have to convene a jury to decide
Yeah.
if somebody's consenting, no, it's not consent. Like the
Yeah.
default is not somebody's consenting. The default should be not consent.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I agree. And then so that was that. And then the case was supposed to go to the New Jersey Supreme Court to make the final decision. But before it could, Anna accepted a plea deal she received for the 2 years' time already served, and she got out of jail in 2017. And this
Mm.
is where I feel like if it was a man or a black man instead of a white woman,
Mhm.
that would never have happened. They would have never got that plea deal.
I agree. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. It's so wild to just to think of a teacher,
Hmm.
just she says, teaching's my identity. And I understand that because I don't teach anymore, but I still consider myself a teacher. It's like one of those things that's like a calling. Like
Uh-huh.
you are a teacher or you aren't. You know what I mean? I
Okay.
will
Yeah.
always be a teacher. And the way I look at things, the way I approach things, I can't imagine a teacher using this poor of judgment ever.
Right.
Like this is
Yeah. So my thoughts were like, okay, everything aside, I don't know what goes on in Anna Stubblefield's brain, but I think it's safe to say that if you were an evil person and you wanted to come up with a playbook of how to manipulate, create an identity for, separate from their family, and like sexually molest a disabled person, this would be a good playbook.
yeah. And so that raises another question. Like, do we think that she is a monster or do we think that she just is a really broken person and like, kind of fell into manipulating this situation? Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
I was thinking about that too, and would think I would wanna know more about her relationship with her mom. Like, I'm wondering if
And
maybe
dad, where's dad?
yeah, and her dad, yeah. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if maybe one of them is the monster and she's, like, been, like, she's been taught delusions. I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I also think having these delusions or being able to retain them is like a privilege because again, if she was a man or if she was a black man, she would have been snapped out of this a lot earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
It's just such a crazy case. Like I couldn't believe it when I was watching. I'm like, where are we going with this? It did have that feel of Mary Kay Letourneau to me. Like Mary Kay
Yeah.
Letourneau, really, and she framed it the same way. Like it was this crazy love story. And
Mhm.
that dude was only like 15. Whether he could
Yeah.
consent or not, that was no, 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 no. That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
don't care if Derek was a Rhodes Scholar.
Right.
To me, no, you just don't do it,
Exactly.
period.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
Like if he had, say he was working with Sharonda and they fell in love.
Yeah.
That might feel different because there's not the power dynamic and she's his peer and she's working with him. But like this felt, there were so many ethical lines crossed, like I said.
Yeah, and I don't like, I just feel like in this kind of a circumstance, I would look to John and Daisy to see like what do they think about this? Like if they were, you know, on board with something, I would be like, okay, maybe, you know, maybe it's fine. But the fact that they're both just completely appalled and then just the story itself is appalling, I'm like even more sure that there's nothing right about it.
Daisy and John, they're the people who are going to have his best interests at heart. And that's not always the case, but that was certainly the case here.
Yes.
And so you're right. Like looking to them, how are they responding to this? And they were both like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh, it's so wild.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good times. A nice uplifting documentary.
Yeah.
Shabnam, thank you for joining me. Thank you for doing all that fun research.
Yeah, of course.
We always love having you.
Thank you.
Guys, if you haven't already, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, if you can. Helps us be found by other people. Helps other people find us. There we go. And join us on Instagram and join us in Backdoor Friends. We have a good time in there. We really do.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.